I could sum my discussion up in a minute. What Dave does free, I do for a fee. I mean, so that's what consultants do. We charge for what we do, and we do about the same thing. So if I could get redundant and say some of the same things over, but I'm not. What I'd like to do is, I was going to talk about some of the landowner objectives, and he pointed some out, but I would like to ask you what you would like a consultant to do on your land. I have some ideas what you could do, but if you have some issues, I would like to have you bring them up. So if some of you have something to start with, I'd like to hear from you. So anybody have an objective or something they'd like to do on their land that they need help with? Nobody wants to do anything. Do you want to sell your timber? Do you want to get after bug trees? What do you want to do?
Well, all of that, there's a particular area I'd like to open up into a park area. It's not flat like a park, but it's kind of open the drop, so you'll be able to see the rock formations and whatnot, and a lot of harvestable trees. But it's a smaller area that's accessible for harvesting, and maybe like a 5 to 10 acre area where it's easily harvestable, but is that large enough to really attract a commercial cutter?
About 5 acres of large timber?
Yeah.
That you want it spread out?
I really want to open it up. To where
What do you mean open up? Some trees, but not too many?
Yeah. Open it up to where the trees aren't obstructing the rim rock view around the whole thing, and reduce the fire danger. So if I build there, that I'm not going to have something blazing up the draw, taking out a house.
So that's the future site of your vista where you're going to build a house?
Right.
Well, it sounds like a nice place. You can deal with that. If you've got harvestable timber, and we look at it, and if the trees aren't too old, if they're more than 100 years old, we have to.
What becomes the issue then?
Well, when they get too old, they won't last very long after you do leave them there. So, but the trees will live long. If you look at the site, so you have to. If they're really too old, then you've got to pick and choose what you're going to leave there. Now, if they're 300 years old, we've got a problem. If they're 70 years old, we can leave more. We can do more with it.
But as far as harvesting them,
yeah, we can.
100-year-old tree is commercial.
Yeah, if they're big enough, we can harvest the trees and thin it out, right? As long as they're not too old. If they're too old, we have to recycle the area into regeneration and get younger trees growing.
Right. I thought you meant if they were over 100 years old, they weren't commercial grade anymore.
No.
Those are.
If they get real old, they get rotten too, of course. Yeah. And if you've got enough to get a load of wood, we can cut it and get a load of wood and take it to the sawmill.
It's actually pretty dense area of
what county is it in?
Pennington.
Pennington? Okay. See, there's a neat project. See, I get weird projects. They're not like you always textbook like John has it. I get weird projects. I'll tell you one that I have just finished. I had to do which will tell you a little bit about silviculture and age. The city of Deadwood hired me to go to Mount Moriah, their cemetery, to core drill some of their trees to see what's going on there, because they want to know the history. How old are these trees? When they started? How come they got there? They're all pine trees right now. I don't know if you've ever been up to see Wild Bill Hickok's grave and been in there. It's real park-like. So I drilled some trees, and one of the trees was 250 years old. I picked out some big ones, and I drilled one of those that are 250 years old, still alive, see. And then most of them were about 130, 120. And they were about the same size, maybe an inch different. So if you were managing that forest, you could have 2 rotations of those trees that are 120 years old, rather than leave the tree grow to be 250 years old and not much bigger. So what for foresters, look at it that way. If you leave your trees get too old, they just quit growing. They'll hang around, but they won't grow much. So you could have on that same land 2 rotations of timber and use that better. But this is, of course, a cemetery. But it shows that some of those trees were there before settlement, and they picked it up. You know, those are the parents of the other trees that are there that came in probably after all the commotion in the late 70s, and then it seeded in, and they groomed some of these seedlings, and now they're 120 years old, 130. So that's the history part, and that's what they wanted to know.
Fire go through that area back in when the big,
Well, Deadwood burned down back in the 70s, 1870 some, so if the fire went up there, these big, yes, the fire did go through there because one of the big ones had a big fire scar on it. Matter of fact, it was rotten inside. I couldn't core drill it because it was rotten. So they survived the fire. It seeded in, and now you have this forest there. So that's a little history. Anybody else got a neat situation? That was a neat one.
Jerry?
Yes?
I had one that was similar, just to keep the conversation rolling. I had to age the tree that someone was hung from down in the southeast.
Yeah.
Because it was the famous hanging tree. And when I cored it and looked at height and age, I was able to calculate the year the guy was hung, the tree was only 3 feet tall. So the rope would have had to have been hanging down from him.
You displayed that myth. There's a lot of myths about this cemetery because if you want to get into it, you know, if you look at the picture of, if you ever seen Wild Bill Hickok's first grave where they buried him, and you see the picture, there are no trees there. You know why? That's a house. Now, they moved the grave up to Mount Moriah. They dug him up and moved him. That's a home. And that's not where he was. So you can't use that visual and say, well, these are the trees that seeded in around that grave. No, it's so they keep the myth and they put it up on Mount Moriah.
they moved him before they put Calamity Jane beside him?
Yeah, they moved the whole business. Yeah, they moved a lot of stuff. So if you want to get into the history, that's kind of a neat thing. And aside, the house, when they were building a house, they found a few more graves when they were building homes in the old cemetery. And one was a part Indian and part Chinese. And there's a lot of bias. So they had to put that person up on a special grave site in the cemetery. And that person's up there with a special Chinese or a Mongoloid, whatever they call it, grave site. But anyway, that's the history. So you can get into history. How many of you guys want to market and just have a timber sale and make some money? Nobody?
Well, I got a question. 2 things. Here, this storm has knocked off the tops out of a bunch of trees.
Mm-hmm.
And I suppose on my property, probably 50, and across the fence on the forest, probably another 50. Are they, you know, they're, looks like they're about 20 or 30
This
feet.
last snowstorm?
Yeah,
And how big a diameter are they?
well, they're about a foot, maybe a little over, in diameter. Are they worth anything?
Sure.
Or
Well, they,
is there,
for a while, they're worth something. Right now, they're probably good for about till next spring, and then they spoil.
you need to cut them.
Yeah, you can't.
The other problem, well, would a logger be interested in them? I mean, do I have to pay him to come and get them, or what? And will the Forest Service, I wonder if they'd sell theirs at the same time, or let them cut them? Because there'd be enough then for a pretty good sized area.
Well, I can't make the Forest Service
Oh,
cut them, and you probably can't either, but you could suggest it to them,
Oh, okay.
but you can't make them.
The other thing, I got about 85 acres of homestead, and there's about 20 acres of it that's just useless. It's just full of pine trees, cedar, or not cedar, but
Spruce?
spruce, well, other trees too, and it's just useless. The cows can't, you know, there's nothing up in there there's not enough up for them to get up there and graze. What's it gonna cost me to have that cleared out so they could grow some grass up in there? I mean, so the grass is growing, they could graze it. That's the only thing I could think it'd be worth.
Well, there's a wildlife management program for clearing meadows out.
The NRCS has the two programs. They have the Wildlife Habitat Improvement Program and the EQIP program. And you probably qualify for both of those.
There you go.
They would,
For 20 acres, would they do it?
yeah,
Yep.
they'll go down to about 10, so,
Oh, okay.
so,
Yeah.
if you know, your district conservationist,
That's in Morris County.
yeah.
Lawrence County, yeah.
I have to ask Greg who that is, because I don't know off the top of my head.
Conservation guy.
What you could do is hire me for a day, and I'd come out and look at it and help, because I'm an ecologist too. I got degrees all over the place. But anyway, I can look at it and tell you what you could do, okay? And then to cost share, we'd stick you on the county or the forester to get your money to sign up for it. And then maybe I could help you find somebody that would do it, get some bids on it. So that's what my job would be.
Oh, I forgot to mention one thing. About 10 years ago, I had it when they came out with that 30-foot deal, thin to 30 feet. I had that done on it.
On that one?
Yeah, on that 20 acres. Yeah. So
And now you want to take those trees out?
well, it's just solid, you know, trees and, you know, it's just worthless for anything. Yeah, I need to thin it out some more, I guess.
Okay. All right, so you've got some cost share programs that'd help you, and that's the ticket. So you take somebody to go out and look at it. I can't solve it from in here, but that's a unique thing to have somebody come in and say, I want to clear cut, or I want to get rid of the trees. Or I want to make it a scenic place. So it's not all just timber sales like maybe our forester friend will say. Those are pretty easy. On a timber sale, what I do is I would administer a timber sale for you because I'd be your person that would watch the sale. You would hire me to do the job that you really don't want to do or don't know how to do it. So you would hire me, and I would charge from 5 to 10% of the stumpage. That's my going rate. If it's only a few trees, I charge more money. If it's a lot of trees, I charge less because I net more per day. Okay? Figure that out?
Yep.
So I would charge you 5 to 10%. Now I have people call me up, and when I say that, they hang up because they don't want to give up 5% of the income. They'd rather ruin their forest and sell the trees and save 5%. So that's my sales pitch on timber sales. If you want it done right, call me or another forester up, and we'll negotiate it. We'll have a signed contract for it, and we'll get you the highest price. And
which is
and
all
we'll
right
do it
to make
right.
up for that 5 or 10% anyway, for having you actively.
Right,
manage.
that's the
So,
sales pitch, right. But,
You clean up the I mean, part of it'd be clean up the mess so you could grade it.
if that's what you wanted, yeah, I would supervise that too. That'd cost you money.
Yeah. Well, last time they didn't clean it up, so that was.
Mm-hmm. And there's some cost share programs on cleaning it up too, isn't there, on chipping and?
What, it would be part of that,
Mhm.
program there, the
Mhm.
equip, I mean, that's included in it. You have to do everything. You have to do the slash treatment to get your payment.
Yeah, so here's that's why, what I do, I'll find out if there's a cost share program for you. And then when you do that, that's directly with the government. I don't get involved in that. You sign up for it, and they pay you for getting it done.
I see.
If
So
you-
there's no way you can afford it, you were talking about $1,000 an acre or something to clean that.
Yeah,
I mean, that'd be ridiculous.
yeah.
You know, depending on how you treat it, yeah, it's gonna.
So when I do a timber sale, I recommend lop and scatter and leave the slash on the ground. That's where you can make some money. And actually, environmentally, it's probably the best because the nutrients, if you know your ecosystem, the nutrients are in the needles and the small branches. They'll just eventually recycle and stay there. When you take the log out, all you're taking is carbon dioxide and water, which is called wood. So the tree takes carbon dioxide and water out of the air through its leaves and makes wood. So when you take the bowl of the tree out, all you're taking out of the forest is carbon dioxide and water, called a carbohydrate or wood. So a lot of people think you're ruining the forest when you take a tree out. All you're doing is changing the position of where that carbon dioxide and water is.
And if they're really green, you locked it up into a building material
Yeah,
that
you know,
won't decompose for 100 years.
Right,
So
if you preserve it in a building, you've locked that. Some people don't like carbon dioxide going in the atmosphere, so that's the benefit. See, he's a good ecologist. Okay.
not in practice.
So I don't like burning, and wood chipping and stuff is expensive. And over time, if you cut it and slash, it would decompose, and you'd have grass. Okay. Anybody else we have some new guests there. We're talking about what you should do with your land, and I'm a consultant forester. And I used to be like Dave there. I used to do his job when I was being paid by the government. So I retired when I was 59. Now I just goof around with landowners, help them out.
To access, and I have a lot more land than that area, but that's what I could access, but I would be coming across a neighbor's property, which I would get in contact with him, and it would require putting in a new road. There was an old trail that had gone through there, but I wanna make that a new road. Are there loggers that would work in conjunction with you to create that access and maybe make part of what they would that they would discount what they're getting from your logging and apply it towards road building, that kind of stuff?
You know, that's if you have a timber sale and there's road costs, and you have stumpage, if there's $10,000 worth of stumpage and there's $1,000 worth of road to be built, you only net $9,000.
Just work that into the equation.
Right. So I'll give you an example, and this is what's real important because some people don't know how to lay out roads, especially some of the loggers. I shouldn't pick on them, but I laid out a road in 1965, and I put it in the woods, through the woods to my place as a grade, and it was outsloped. The shortest way in was like a quarter of a mile. This took a mile to get it around.
But it wasn't gonna erode.
That road is still there. It's never been eroded. Sometimes the brush will come in, so you had to trim a few trees out, but that road has been there ever since I put it in. And I live at the end of that road right now.
And the reason I wanna come in that way is for that purpose.
So call me up to help lay out that road.
Okay.
It's worth your money. See, that's another thing I can do. Okay. And anybody else got he's good. He's got lots of issues. Anyone else have a problem that they want to pay to help get solved? I do some volunteer work too right now, because my biggest thing is I live in a neighborhood, there's 50 landowners in this, and they own about 5 acres on the average each. And with the GPS, I went out and GPSed all the bark beetle trees in my neighborhood and overlaid it on a map, and the county helped me. It was real simple. Take the GPS to the county, they'll tell you where they are, and so I found out who owned what bug trees. And then I wrote letters to them all and told them that I had helped them get them out. So then I had to go to the sawmill to see if they'll buy the logs, because there's 12 here and 15 there, and there was 125 on my land and 140 on another guy's land. So what I did is ask each landowner to give me $15, and I'd get the logs out. I'd take them to the sawmill. And then I asked the sawmill to give me some money delivered. And that was the biggest issue, because they didn't give me very much money. About $32 a ton. So it's costing me $40 a ton to cut, skid, and haul. So that's why I asked the landowner for $15 a tree, if they could afford it. And most of them paid. So we're getting rid of in our 50 landowners, as well as some of the adjacent landowners, the trees as saw logs, and they go to the sawmill. So that's kind of a cooperative deal. And I hope I don't lose any money. And then I go on the Forest Service and I get a permit, and I can go in 150 feet or so on their land and take their trees out. So we try to do it that way. So that's a cooperative deal, and I can...
You're able to market their trees as well?
Yeah. No, I can't market there. I have to chunk theirs. Yeah. So that's one of the issues. And then we cut and chunk the smaller trees. So the guy that... So if we have enough saw timber, we can kind of break even. If it's all chunking, then because it costs just about $15 a tree just to chunk it.
Can't you apply for
I don't get involved. I don't like the government involved in that. Because that would take every landowner to sign up for his 12 trees and get a cost share. I don't know if you can do it as a cooperative thing, but
whatever 99 form and all that
yeah.
for the readers?
I usually avoid the government if I can't help it. So if I can do it that way, I break even. And I suggest that if you live in a neighborhood and you only got like 5-6 acres, get together with your neighbors and get those bug trees out before the snow flies, particularly in the fall, not waiting till spring, because the quality of the wood, I don't know, the sawmills cut off taking the wood about sometime in January, because they don't like that blue stained wood. We try to encourage them to take it, but sometimes they don't like it, or they'll give you less money for it. Okay, so those are some of the issues. The bark beetle issue has been my biggest demand right now. People want to know, do I have bugs on my land? And then I go out and look at it.
So, like on hogback, is most of these trees IPS beetles that are showing up, like, on the north side of the interstate. If you look from the, interstate side from Cat, looking towards the hogback, yeah, last year or two, see the, and then over on the foothills too, like over where Leans is, where they cut the edge of their, where their quarry is, I think they root cut a lot of trees, went red over there. Does root cutting draw in the hips a lot?
Yeah, well, John might get in how to take care of your trees by
I just wondered.
by cutting the roots. Yeah, there's
I've gone to some
there's
of the closer ones by me, and there was a few pine beetle trees, but it seemed like most of them were ips, and a lot of them were smaller trees, even in the dog hair stand that looked like ips. Like you said, the shotgun pattern on them,
yeah.
and no pitch tubes.
So you'd have to look at them closely, and if there's slash around where they can breed and multiply, yeah. So it's kind of a situation I don't really know.
And these were standing trees.
Yeah, and I wish I knew what caused beetles to go where they go, because I see them all over the place, and I haven't got any rhyme or reason. And one of the things that we bring up is a variety of trees per acre, which is one of the D's that you brought up, and I have this beautiful stand that I planted in 1965 of spruce, and it looks like Colorado spruce in there. And because there was no market for these trees, the big pine that were in there, they all grew up, and now they're about this big around, scattered through that spruce stand. Well, why did the beetles come in there and attack every one of those scattered pine in that spruce stand? But fortunately, if they died, it's not going to make much difference because they're not needed anymore.
Unless they drop on your spruce.
Except if you go to log them, you're going to kill a few spruce. So it's kind of a, and we're going to get them out of there as safe as we can because they're nice, big, timber-sized logs. But that's what's weird about it. I thought they went to these dense stands that were never taken care of and always, overstocked and sickly trees. I thought they'd go in there, but they go in some nice trees. So I don't know why they do it. So if you had the answer, you'd make $1 million. How are we doing on time?
A couple more minutes.
Okay. Any other questions? Here's my sales pitch again for what I do. When I go out in the forest, and if you want to cut your timber, and I would look at it to about a basal area. I use basal area, and with my experience, I can cut that forest and that timber to exactly the basal area it should be. And I would leave the best trees that should be left there. And that's the art of a forester. It's kind of an art, and I've been doing it for forever. And so you need somebody that would do that. You can't always trust the logger because the logger will take the straight one and leave the crooked one, and leave a mess. So, and they won't always leave the slash under 18 inches. So that's my job, is to help that timber sale become be done correctly. Let's call it that way.
Is there a limit to the topography, the slope, that they can mechanically log?
If they want a cable yard, sometimes we can, if there's a good volume, we will get them to cable yard and pull it uphill. So you'll need a trail in on the ridge, and then they draw them uphill.
It would be the opposite. I'm around Keystone, all my ridges are rock top.
So then you might have, so there are places where you can't get to.
Yeah.
We call it inoperable. And then you treat that differently. So sometimes you have to give up on on logging because you can't get to it. It's too steep, too rugged. Okay, any other questions? Did I help you out any? Do you know what a consultant does now? But anything you want. I just want to finish up with a couple of comments because you got all the logging and the cutting and all that down, right? But the most important part is the silviculture. Why are you cutting the trees? Which trees should you cut? Who's going to decide what trees should be cut? How far apart they should be cut? How do you recognize a good tree, an old one from a young one? Who's going to do that? So you need an expert out there marking your trees. And then you mark them so that the logger can see the marks and not make a mistake. Now, if he makes a mistake, you can do it in your contract. If he takes a tree that isn't marked, we'll fine him for it, triple stumpage. So that's the job I like to do. So get somebody or somebody like me who can do that. Because sometimes the landowner, sometimes they'll say, well, if you don't have it marked, they'll go in there, I'll just take the big ones and leave those little ones to grow. Well, those little ones next to those big ones are probably the same age as those big ones. And so they're not going to grow. So that's deception. That's called high grading. So don't let them do that. Get some, if you can train yourself, I've trained landowners to do it themselves. But make sure you do it right. So that's my last pitch. Thank you.